Today's question is, what should I feed my cat? Okay, so question number 3 is all about what should we feed a cat. So this new cat owner had an older cat that died, who was 18 years old and was fed mostly on a dry food on advice of their vet. So 18 years old is a very respectable age. They fed her according to her weight twice a day, and she was in really good health and an ideal weight for the vast majority of her life. But they've just got a new kitten and they're wondering, what should they feed and how much should they feed her? Should it be wet food, dry food, raw, a mixture? What's the best thing? Well, let's start with the fact that feeding and food in cats and dogs can be a really controversial subject. But, here's my kind of brief summary opinion. And, I'd be really interested to hear what you think of this as well. As far as what amount we need to feed now, obesity is a huge epidemic. So many cats and so many dogs are obese. It's just really very tragic, and they're not living the life that they want, and they're getting diseases that they shouldn't have to. So really the amount we feed is as much as she needs and no more. Really we need to base that on monitoring weight trends and body condition scoring. So that's something that the veterinary team can go through. The vet techs and vet nurses are fantastic at monitoring weight and maintaining weight, and very often clinics are running weight clinics as well. Also ask your vet what your cat's ideal weight is when they're next in for their next checkup. That's something that we really need to be discussing in any wellness consultation. We want to be evaluating weight and checking that our pets are a healthy weight and not kind of creeping up, because it's very easy for a little bit of a creep to take place over a number of years, and before you know it, you've got a cat who's overweight or even morbidly obese. You can also obviously monitor weight at home, and we monitor that on bathroom or kitchen scales or something like that. So, we need to feed the amount that an individual cat needs, and there's going to be a huge variation. So I often find that if you're feeding a commercial food, then the pet food manufacturers will slightly overestimate the amount to feed, unless your cat or your dog is very active. So we need to feed appropriate for the individual lifestyle and the individual genetics as well. Now, if we're thinking about actually what to feed, well, I don't recommend raw feeding, and that's for a number of different reasons. It's a health risk to us as their owners, albeit a low health risk. It's potentially serious, as well as being health risks to any raw fed cat. And I've actually got a comprehensive article kind of about all of these risks and benefits and discussing this over on ourpetshealth.com or on the Our Pets Health podcast. Now, I feel dry food is fine to feed a healthy cat. This is something that, again, people get very passionate about, and will claim that if they're developing certain conditions such as kidney disease because they're being fed a dry food, but really that doesn't follow. There's no evidence for that. If a cat does have kidney disease, then wet food it is going to be generally preferred. Well, it's going to be definitely preferred if at all possible, but that in itself doesn't mean that dry food causes these problems in otherwise healthy cats. Now, one thing to bear in mind if you are feeding dry food is that cats can become kibble junkies, so they'll only ever then eat dry food if that's all they're ever used to. So I definitely think it's a good idea, if you are feeding a dry food, if you're choosing to feed a dry commercial kibble, then it's a good idea to also feed some wet food of different textures, different consistencies and different flavors every now and then, just to help avoid your cat becoming a dry food addict. Now, let's moving on to wet feeding. Now, feeding a wet food is never going to be the wrong thing to do. It encourages water intake, which is something cats aren't very good at. A normal healthy cat is able to compensate for a low water intake, because in the wild, in the desert where they originate, then they don't generally get a lot of water, so they're just they're used to drawing a lot of water out of their food. But if we're giving them a wet food, they're definitely going to have enough water. We don't need to worry about that. And then if they do develop a condition later on that means that we need, or that we want them to have a high water intake, so be that kidney disease, be that diabetes, then they're already being fed and they're already happy to accept a wet food, which can be very important. But there are also other ways to get cats to drink as well, which I've discussed separately elsewhere. So that's kind of my very broad summary on feeding. I don't recommend raw. I don't think inherently for every cat that a dry kibble is bad, and actually I do feed my cats a dry kibble, but equally we should be feeding wet food every now and then, just to make sure that they're used to that. And if you want to feed a wet food, then that's never going to be the wrong thing to do. So potentially that's therefore the best thing to do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this potentially controversial topic.
You've been watching the Dr. Alex Answers video podcast. Remember to subscribe and head over to dralexanswers.com for any links, downloads, and get your question answered.